thank you so much for trekking all the way to the Bellagio from wherever you hailed from this morning. But just welcome to the Fintech Penthouse, live at Money 2020 at Las Vegas for our breakfast edition. Was anyone here for the toast last night? Raise your hand. Okay, a lot of you. So we're hanging out again, but this time with coffee instead of Prosecco. There is Prosecco, from last night. So if you do want a mimosa, that is totally possible and encouraged. I encourage it. I do want to make sure that we take a moment to just look around and really admire how powerful and innovative this room really is. We are collectively global thinkers, builders, doers, and just people that are constantly reimagining what financial systems of tomorrow can look like. And what I love about this community is that we are ready to do it and build together. I've really been sitting on this theme of us being in this in-between era and 2025 being such an inflection point, because so clearly the old way of doing things is just not working in any system, right? Whether it's our financial system, Mary and I were just talking about just media and how rapidly that's changing. But what's exciting is that we're in this new era where the future is being written in real time, and it's being written by people like us. So this is where the opportunity lives, because all of us have this incredible chance and opportunity to be able to be the leaders of this new era if we're willing to step up and tell the story of us doing it. And that's why we're here today. As a writer, I kind of like to call this phase of our world the rewrite phase. That moment between breakdown and breakthrough, and the global financial system is also being reimagined, but not necessarily by governments or incumbents, but by people like us, founders, operators, media folk, and communities. We've really entered this multipolar world, one where the power, innovation, and capital no longer flows from one single source. The US isn't really the center of gravity that it once was, and no single nation or institution can really shoulder that weight of the world's financial infrastructure. But we, the global fintech community, could. We have the responsibility and the privilege to build what comes next, which is a financial system that is more inclusive, more resilient, and more connected than ever before. And the opportunity is massive. Global fintech revenue is projected to surpass $400 billion by 2030, with emerging markets leading that growth. Nearly 80 countries already have real-time payment systems connecting billions through instant transactions. So the next decade won't necessarily be about digitizing money. We've already done that. It'll actually be about synchronizing economies. And that's why growing global matters. Because scaling across borders isn't just about expanding reach. It's about expanding our perspectives. It's about thinking bigger and bolder and braver than we ever had. It's about taking what we've learned here in North America and bringing it to new markets, collaboratively, inclusively, and responsibly. So today's gathering is exactly about that. And to kick us off, I'm excited to interview a leader who's helped shape some of the world's most iconic brands with scale and purpose, from Condé Nast to Rodal and now to Fintech Meetup. As a journalist, I am fangirling here. So please welcome Mary Murcko, head of growth at Fintech Meetup, where she's leading the company's international expansion, starting with the first ever Fintech Meetup Europe in Lisbon. Give it up for Mary.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mary, you've built your career around growth. You've led transformations across industries, from media to fintech, local to global. You've done it through times of massive change. So today I want to explore what growth really means, when to chase it, how to shape it, and what to protect along the way. So let's start with Fintech Meetup. It's become one of the most anticipated events in the industry, as we were just talking about sidebarring. And now you're taking it global for the first time. What were some of the key signals that told you it was time to make that leap into Europe?
So we always planned to expand internationally. That's always been part of our path. But we spent these last few years here in the US particularly really understanding what the audience wants, what works really well. And so we've had an enormous amount of success. And the core of what we do is based around meetings. Our belief is that for all of us in this room, and it's so great. Thank you again for having me here. It's like, seriously, it's so great to see so many different faces here, people that I haven't met, but also shaping this future. And so we really wanted to hear from everyone and really understand, why they were coming to events, et cetera. So by doing this and by focusing on meetings, it allowed us to create a completely different type of event. And we knew we were changing things because the meetings came first, the connections came first, the community came first. And now with that, what we've seen so far is 96% of our people show up at their meetings. 92% say that they're really satisfied with the meeting. They didn't have a meeting and hated it or anything like that. So we knew we were onto something. So then we started to be, okay, now we have great momentum here. Our parent company, Hive, also has a great playbook in terms of launching internationally. They're based in the UK. So we had a lot of resources to draw from. So then we started to look at Europe. And obviously that became the first place we wanted to go. We wanted to take this model and bring it there, which is what we're doing in Lisbon next October. And what's really interesting about it in figuring out, one, that it was Lisbon, but also that now was the time, is that we started to see at Fintech Meetup a huge amount of people from everyone outside the U.S., from Europe, from Canada, from APAC, everywhere. Were coming here for Fintech Meetup. So we wanted to bring this experience to Europe and to go first. We didn't want to go to the classics where everybody goes. We decided that Lisbon, because of its energy, its vitality, I can't wait to go there. But
Have you been?
No, I have not been to Lisbon. I'm dying to go. I'm so excited.
Heard great things.
So for all those reasons, it made sense for us. Now, the show will change a little bit in Lisbon in that it will still, the core still meetings, exactly what we do, still based on relationships, still thought leadership and content. But in Europe, it's a little bit different in terms of the expo piece. That we won't be doing initially in Lisbon, because we really want to focus on the meetings, the relationship building, and our content and thought leadership. So we're expecting, sorry, it's a very long-winded answer.
No, this is actually really great. I'm pretty sure I have full-on breaking news in the thing, so keep going.
So it really has allowed us to, we're already out there. We have some great initial sponsors, we want to say our launch sponsors, everybody from JP Morgan, we have Plaid, just to name a few. So
Visa,
people,
right?
And Visa, yes, I think Visa, yes. So we're really seeing this momentum, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So it starts here, and now we're able to take this kind of around the world.
Yeah,
You're being first.
I love it. So the reason I said the breaking news element of it, because I feel like a conference of a Fintech Meetup size not having an expo floor and instead deciding to focus on the content and the meetings, whoa, sounds innovative, which is crazy. But largely because, the expo floor, it feels like a bit of a dying breed, right? Are we focusing on foot traffic still? Is that, that feels like it's weaning. And so that is an interesting choice.
It's interesting, but it also depends on the market.
Yeah.
European market is a little bit different than here. And I think a big part when you launch outside of, where you start is really listening to the people there, what you see works, but also asking questions, talking to potential sponsors, talking to potential attendees, working with FinTech councils in the different areas, so really understanding the culture and what really works here. Whereas here in the U.S., the expo idea works so well because, one, our conferences are obviously bigger, but there's also a whole element of brand awareness and connection that also happens on the expo floor. So I think it's just culturally depending on where you're going to be and what your conference is, and also being open to the idea that, we're all creating, as everybody in this room, right? We're all creating things as we go, right? We're all learning, we're iterating. The market's changing so fast around us. So it's really important to be ahead of it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So it feels like the specific metrics that you were able to kind of pull from are international audience growth, part that showed up to the U.S. show, partner demand, and then attendee feedback.
Yes,
right. Wanting to help validate that decision. Your background is incredible. So everyone Google Mary Murcko after this. We'll have a good time. Yeah, there's like a lot of Getty images. There's like decades of experience. You have scaled powerhouse media brands like Women's Health and Self into international forces.
Yeah,
I love a media girly who is ready to disrupt fintech. We're like kindred spirits,
right? We were talking about that, definitely.
And I'm so curious, how has that past experience and that long history in media, really, how are you applying those lessons learned into this international expansion for Fintech Meetup? What are the key things that you've learned that you're able to just make things different? And because I do think that in our industry now, we find a lot of fintech operators being pushed to have to do content. And that's so unfortunate for them because they're like, I am not trained to do this. I know how to code, not content, whatever. So I am curious tell us a little bit more about your background there and that experience and how it's shaping how you think about this next wave for fintech and Fintech Meetup.
So I think it's like launching any brand, as many founders here know. You have to be crystal clear and have just so much clarity about who you're talking to, who your audience is, what you want them to get from it, and your value. Right? What do you bring? And I think that kind of underlies across industries, everything. So, and in terms of global, I've been on both sides of both been the company launching the brand globally, but I've also been the local person taking it, to a country. So I had early in my career, I worked for, I don't know if you guys know Elle Magazine, fashion.
We're familiar.
Okay. We're familiar. So Elle had this brainstorm to launch in Asia, right? And so I went to Bangkok to be the local Elle in Asia. So I got to see the other side of when a large company launches locally. And that experience taught me so much about going global. Because there's a fine balance between these are all the ways you should do things and where you can learn from the country you're going to. And it's something that has always stayed with me as I brought other brands. Went back to the other side and brought other brands internationally. Really because, and some of it's very nuanced. Some of it's obvious, but listening to that audience in the local country or in the local region that you're going to is the most important thing. And the expectation from them is that you have clarity, that you understand. If you don't understand when you're in the market, either bringing partners in or, explaining your value, if you're not committed to it, if you don't understand it, they will not either. And I think this particularly applies as it relates to fintech, especially because their needs of fintech, as you mentioned earlier, they're farther ahead on so many of these regions, particularly emerging markets, from where we are here. So understand, meeting them where they are, but also enabling it to grow further. And you always want to go in with that mindset, that growth mindset, but you have to understand where you're starting and you have to have that clarity.
Yeah, and that clarity is what enables the narrative and the storytelling that we all have now become, basically, right? Whether if you're, a fintech founder here or, more on the technical side of things, at the end of the day, we all have to embark on this journey of being storytellers. If we are, it's kind of become this key element of success. It kind of always has been, y'all. But now, especially more than ever, and our industry often is always, it's, of course, we're always leading with data and product and all these things, but in media, we always lead with storytelling, and that's this new wave that's really happening in our very technical and transactional industry. And a lot of that having to do, since I've been here at Money 2020, there's been a lot of discussion and themes around trust. Even when I'm on stage interviewing, CEOs and stuff about blockchain or whatever it is, this theme of like trust and narrative continues to come back around.
Yes.
Even if I'm even as technical as possible I could get, they're like, but the narrative, if the narrative doesn't work, then none of this matters. And I'm like, okay, well, you said it.
Yeah.
I'm like, so you should do something about that. Anyway, but I guess I'm curious, like, what are some key things that I think the fintech founders out there can really learn from the media when it comes to building trust and resonance in new markets?
I would say one of the most important things, and you mentioned storytelling, as humans, we're natural storytellers. Like, we all do it, right? We do it on a daily basis. Like, that's kind of who we are. And I would say one of the most important things in going to a new market is leaning into that, leaning into the human side. And sometimes it's a little, with tech and, kind of bringing it forward, it can be a little harder to do. Harder is the wrong word. It's not harder. It's a little easier not to do. And it's a really important thing when you launch internationally and launch globally, because that's what's going to, make your product, make it adaptable. That's going to be why people use it, why they talk about you, and why they want to grow it. But that's a two-way street. So I think that that human part, though, internationally is, I can't stress it enough. I can't stress storytelling enough. But I can also say that, and the trust piece. Because again, you've all seen them, right? There are so many companies that are not trustworthy. That makes right.
There's a few of them.
And, they're just out there in general, all industries. So building that trust in the countries and the regions that you go into also makes a huge, huge difference. So trust, human trust, clarity, I think are really key things as you go international.
Right, and the growth follows with that. So, I mean, earlier you had mentioned the importance of clarity, and actually, so I am actually coming out with our first digital course for Fintech is Femme, and it is our Career Creator Springboard, where I'm giving away for the first time my playbook for how I grew Fintech is Femme from 0 to the 50,000 subscribers, because I want more founders and the women in our community to have access to that. Yeah. And so I can't wait to drop that. I'm working on it. It's one of the few things we're doing. But I bring it up because earlier, you had mentioned the clarity piece. And one of the first modules of our course is talking about just establishing your core value pillars, and that being the framework for every piece of content that you do and every story that you tell. And I'm curious for you, like, consistency and cohesiveness around a brand identity is huge, right? And so what are some of your tactics or secrets around adapting to the nuances of a new region while keeping that brand identity cohesive? Because you do have to, there is no copy and paste from US to Lisbon, or any market, as you shared, right? There are very different cultural nuances there. So what are some of your tricks that maybe you've learned? Maybe L, maybe self, Condé Nast, whatever.
I think that, it's interesting that you say that, because, those core pillars are incredibly important. And this comes back to what I was talking about earlier in terms of understanding who you are, what your value is, et cetera. And I find that in order to grow in a region, their expectation is that you've already made it adaptable for them. You walk in the door knowing that this is going to be a great addition to what they're doing. They have to believe that. And your core values, your mission, your objectives, have to mirror that. And you don't change them for the country, right? But you have to make it for them. The classic people always say, you always ask the question, why do I care? Right. And, that you have to be able to answer that for each and every region. What is it adding? And I think the biggest thing is, what am I bringing? What is it adding? How am I making your customer's life better? How am I making your business better? Every time you bring that to the forefront, the adapting of your tech goes through the roof. Like that's what they want to see. That's what they want to know. Don't make them guess. Make them figure it out for themselves.
Yeah.
Like help it, have the conversation with them, because I think it's a really, it just makes it faster, but it also makes it better. And that's what you want to be able to walk away with.
Yeah, no, I love that. Can you give us like a real life example, maybe something Fintech Meetup is doing differently in Europe than in the US because of those cultural differences when it comes to the storytelling?
So first of all, just the show itself.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, a big reason, again, we're going into Europe and, expanding internationally is because obviously fintech is global. It's probably one of the most inherently global industries. But what we did see when we talk about Fintech Europe is that their relationship part of their business is even greater than it is here.
Yeah.
And we really wanted to make sure that we leaned into that. So it didn't change our goals or, our mission of connectivity, our mission of, high ROI, our mission of, big return on investment when you're working with us. But doing a little differently there, right? We're, again, still the core of what we're doing, but, still the core of our values. But we're leaning into a piece of it even bigger there than and here.
Yeah.
So it's real, and it's really made a difference, again, enabling us not just to get launch sponsors, but, we're selling tickets now, so we're seeing it, we're seeing people adopt and kind of be like, yeah, and Lisbon helps. I mean, like people want to go to Lisbon.
All right. Well, as an aspiring, I aspire to have Fintech is Femme summits in international markets, and we've dabbled a little bit. Then for just for me to give me some advice. When you're starting something completely new like this, what are those conversations like with these massive sponsors? Like you go to JP Morgan, you go to Visa, whoever, and you're like, hey, I'm doing something new. You should totally invest in this. How's that go?
So it's fascinating.
Tell me your script.
So I tell you, it's all built on the success you've already had with them.
Right.
Most important thing, they have to trust not only were they successful with you in the U.S., like you are here, right? But that you understand the market you're going to, and that you're able to replicate the success you've had here for them there. Like that is the most important thing.
What they want.
They just want to understand that you've just now taken, they're already there. They're already doing business. You've just taken all the risk out of them trying something else. And that makes a huge difference. And I've seen it both in fintech, I've seen it in fashion, I've seen it in health, where health is a completely different world than ever. There's no pharmaceutical ads anywhere outside of here. There's no, so how do you bring that, how do you bring this value proposition, around the world? And again, for sponsors, it's about trust, lowering their risk, helping their business.
Yeah. Okay. That is actually really, really helpful. Yeah. Did you jot that down? Okay, good. No, just completely remove of any risks. But honestly, so we have a whiteboard in our office, and the Fintech is Femme headquarters, if you will. And our kind of internal slogan is start small, scale fast, dream big.
Yeah.
And
I love that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And future merch. And but that kind of reminds me of that kind of core value that we hold for us. And so I think when you, as anyone here that is, thinking about expanding into new markets, whatever market you're in now, what are the pieces of success and credibility, even if small, that you can showcase here and then, lay out the story and do the blueprint and have the research done where you can show future sponsors or investors or partners that the risk is minimal. Yeah. Right? That is really, really helpful. All right. We are closing out here. Okay. So we did talk about we talked about risk, right? Yep. Every global expansion or any type of move enables the chance of some risks. Yep. What is one big lesson or even misstep from your career that's shaped how you approach timing and risk-taking today?
So the biggest thing for me was before, and I'm going to just go way back, right? But again, before I moved to Bangkok, I'll be honest, like kind of afraid of things. You know what I mean? You're afraid of failing. You're afraid of like something's not going to work. You're afraid of all those things, right? All keeps us up at night, right? Then I was put into a place where nothing worked. Like there was nothing. Like no. And it's all of a sudden, like all that fear, all that stuff that I had was like gone because I just had to make things happen. I had to figure out how to get things from point A to point B. I had to figure out a language that I didn't speak and I still don't speak, but everything was done in our language. So it really taught me this, like when I weighed myself down on all the little things that, the 5 levels ahead of me was like, telling me about, it didn't matter. Right? That I was perfectly capable. And for founders in the room, I'm sure you feel this way, that you're perfectly capable of actually getting things done and getting it in an environment that is completely strange and awful to you at first. Chaotic is the word I would use. And I think that curiosity, but it all stemmed in curiosity. And that was probably my biggest lesson. Was that stop like trying to like do things only one way. Stop doing it just me, but be curious, ask questions, listen to what people tell you. And, again, you're not going to take everything, but I've really learned it was really important to bring that curiosity to everything that I did. And I still do it today. Well, I try to. People here that work with may not agree, but I really do. And, to try and really ask, the hard questions, but also be really open to what I hear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, one of the core things I share, and I'm just teasing my digital course largely because I'm excited about it and we just worked on it, but is think like a journalist.
Yeah.
And so when you say to lean into that curiosity, like I'm of the belief that if we all thought a little bit more like journalists, like I do, then that would open just so many more doors to new things and interesting innovations. And so I think that's so
and points of view.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, open to hearing other points of view that could be completely different.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, these are all really, really valuable things to being able to expand globally, to thinking about just like the brand cohesiveness about anything that you're doing, whether you're building a tech company or a fintech or it's media or go to market, whatever that is. But this has been really, really helpful, Mary, and very tactical. So I'm excited to be able to, I'll be writing about this in the newsletter later. So there will be, and obviously this is a live podcast, so you all get to hear this and jot down any notes later as well. But Mary, thank you so much.
Thank you
for joining us. Please join me in thanking Mary for her time.
Great to be here.
So we've just heard about when to grow globally. I now want to talk about the how, because scaling across borders really isn't just about moving money. It's about moving people, ideas, and opportunity, as we've shared. And we have 2 incredible leaders joining us. Feel free to come take your seats, ladies, and get cozy with the mic. All right. So as they're setting up, I will share that with us is Jessica Johnson, founder and president of Rosie Finch Method & Co., a growth sales and marketing consulting firm driving smarter growth for fintechs across LATAM, the EU, and the US. She is also her and her team are building an AI platform that is in stealth. So however much info I can get on that. That was all I was allowed to share, that is it. Okay. And then also we have the incredible Remy Searles, Executive Director of the Joblio Foundation, which is scaling solutions for equitable hiring and migration in a new era of work. Here at Fintech SPEM, the intersection of AI and the future of work is something I am fascinated by. So I'm excited for this discussion. Let's get into it. Everyone come with their mics. We're all good?
We're good.
Okay. Yes. Jessica, you've helped fintechs expand across LATAM, EU, and the US. What are the most important success metrics or milestones that signal a company is actually ready to scale globally?
I think first you have a product. It sounds really basic, but we work with a lot of firms that are kind of building as they're going. And I think having a product that really feels like it can live in a different ecosystem. I think the other major important piece is there should be a connection, right? It shouldn't just be, I aspire to go to a country I've never been in. Do you actually have any insight into the language, the culture, the people? And I think that research and that backbone of all that work needs to be done before that decision is made.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds basic, but Yeah.
One.
There's a lot of examples where we're like, no,
So you
that's ready.
You have, yeah. So wait, you have companies that like come to you and are like, I want to expand globally, and they have like no strong product
Yeah.
initially yet.
Absolutely.
Wow.
I think I'm not doing well in the U.S. We're like, well,
Oh,
and we're, our solution is we're going to go global. We're like, maybe that's not the solution. Maybe there's some other things to do alternatively. So then we actually start to look at what's going on from a growth perspective in country and start to think, can we build a roadmap? And I love that I get to share this chair with Mary. This really feels special to me.
it is.
This is pretty cool. But I would say, I think the playbook, right? There is a playbook. There are things happening in the market that we need to take a look at before that global expansion happens. And I think this whole proprietary method that we brought to life allows us to look at 6 different sectors and allows us to say, okay, and this might be the right time to pull the trigger or to start planning that playbook.
For those that are not familiar, will you talk a little bit about some of that proprietary insight that you have in terms of how you're, advising and consulting these companies that are apparently so thinking that going to a new market is the solution, which I think is insane. That must be a fun conversation for you. You're just like,
well, I think
how about dots?
I think one of the really interesting things that we've been able to do is my background is in finance. I worked for a very large bank for a very long period of time. And every time we wanted a report, we would ask for it and they would charge us like a gazillion dollars to have said report. So one of the things that we try to do is, can we pull all these different data points for our clients in a really simplistic way and not charge them, put this crazy paywall through it. So actually looking at what is happening in the market with spend, what are your competitors doing, what is happening with media channels, what does creative look like, and just really being able to pull that through and do that together. And that's some of the work that we've done with Joblio and their foundation.
Yeah, no, I love that. And actually, let's learn a little bit more, Remy, about Joblio, which is tackling one of the most complex and human challenges in globalization, which is creating ethical pathways for labor and migration. When you evaluate a new country or region for expansion, what are the first 3 things you assess before entering that market? And feel free to also just let the folks know a bit more about Joblio.
So I'm always excited to talk about Joblio. And Mary, I will see you in Lisbon. We are launching in Lisbon. We'll come back to that in a second. We're launching in Portugal the next month. But yeah, welcome. Everybody come to Portugal. So a few things. So one, Joblio is really focused on talent, right? Human talent, global talent, moving people from one place to another. The global labor migration movement is 200 million some odd people, 197 million people that are born someplace else that live and work in another place and that go back and forth, right? You're not immigrating, you're global labor migrants, right? That's everyone from healthcare to hospitality to everything in between, construction, IT, all those pieces. What Joblio does is connects employers in that way directly with labor migrants around the world. And we do that in a really ethical way because what happens outside the US, and people don't realize that sometimes, people are paying to go to work. People are saying, you know what, I need a job. I'm a welder. I live in Indonesia. I really want to get this job in Portugal because they're having a massive labor shortage for welders. What do? They'll go to somebody's uncle and say, hey, I can get you a job here. Give me $10,000. We'll go over here. It's not only illegal, it's completely unethical, right? So what Joblio does is cuts that out, right? We focus really heavily on that individual and then the employer, making that direct connection between the two. So finding global talent, finding the right global companies that are working to hire labor migrants and sticking the two together.
All right, amazing. And so you mentioned the expansion also into Portugal, which apparently is a very popular place.
It is.
These days. The FOMO continues to rise as I haven't been there, but apparently I'm going to go next October, right? Right? Okay, good. Sorted. So what are some of maybe like the first 3 things that you look at before choosing or deciding on what market next?
So the first thing we look at is there a need, right? Is there a labor shortage? Most places around the world there is. there are labor shortages up to 80% in places like Japan, in places like Portugal, in places like the United States, especially post-COVID and with a very aging workforce. However, that can be issue one. However, what happens is that the number two thing that we need to look at is, are they ready? You might have a labor shortage. Are you issuing visas? Right? So in a place like the U.S. where there are labor shortages, particularly in agriculture and a few other areas, yes, the shortage is there. However, are people actually going to be able to come into the country and get a visa and come and go to work? Not so much right now.
Right.
So that can be an issue, but if it can't be addressed, there's nothing that we can really do about that. The other thing that we look at is what's happening on the ground. Is there an appetite with employers to be able to hire labor migrants? Some folks maybe don't necessarily want to. Maybe they don't know what that looks like. Maybe they've heard horror stories or something else. But yeah, what does that climate look like? And is it actually something that we can make a dent in and we can actually get people into the country to work?
Yeah. So there's basically this like 3-pronged strategy that you have to evaluate. I think it's a lot more than people might expect or realize. And we have talked a lot about, the branding and the messaging piece of that with Mary. So Jessica, I kind of want to get into the how more with you. So when you're helping a fintech or a tech company launch in a new market, what's your process for really adapting that brand message? Walk us through that framework of how that actually comes to be.
Sure. I think it's so important to actually have boots or heels on the ground, right? Like,
Or heel.
truly. In our case, when talking to Joblio about Brazil and their entry into that market, 50% of our creative team is from Brazil. So all of the work that we're doing actually is coming from people who this work would impact.
Yeah.
And I think that has been, I don't want to say it's like a secret sauce, but I think having either a partner, agency, research, a connection to that culture to also gut check, right? Like if you're going to put a message out there, like we've had some as we're creating creative, we're like, does that resonate? Does this translate correctly? So something doesn't necessarily translate from Spanish to Portuguese to English the same way. And
You can have some doozies there.
totally. And I think that has, having Latin American presence has been a huge game changer for us because even my co-founder and myself, we can't gut check every single thing. And we don't know, we speak multiple languages, but not to the fluency that is required. So I think having a partner who can do that for you is really essential.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I agree completely. That's why this relationship matters so much. Understanding exactly that is it's everything. You've seen examples in the same way that that gut check didn't happen. And
We're like translating the whole product.
Yeah.
Into 3 languages, which, makes a difference.
Right. Well, I mean, because of the whole, languages don't always mean the same things in different languages all the time. No, that framework makes a lot of sense because you're having to do a lot. You're having to assess audience behavior and local culture and channel strategy to make all of that feel native to a region. It kind of seems like a lot. Like it does seem, and I'm curious about some of the companies that you work with and that how are you having the resources to be able to do all of those things? Because that is a lot. So, how do you assess if a company is ready to actually do that? You could even, how do you just make sure Joblio was okay?
I think we're ready. Are we ready? Have we go?
It's happening, no?
It's happening.
Okay, yeah, I know. So I'm maybe they're a great example. What were those boxes that just kind of checked?
I think what's really incredible about what Joblio is doing is you need to spend money to go into a new market and make money. And I think that is knowing your numbers, I think, becomes one of the most essential pieces that we do first. And I think when looking at growth, right, all of us are looking at what is your customer acquisition cost? What does it look like when you're launching in that market, turning on a channel? How do we know it worked? And I think, for instance, Brazil in particular has a stronger affinity for social media than most countries. I lived there. I felt it. It was insane how people were obsessed with influencers. that became part of Joblio's strategy, because in order for us to really show ethos, we really need to have, these people talking about what is Joblio? What is this global workforce problem that we're trying to solve? So I think really being in country and understanding what is going to resonate with the people there, it becomes instrumental.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What about like some of the compliance layers of global work? Because that is challenging. I mean, in the U.S., compliance and regulation is particularly complex because of the federal and state elements. But how are you kind of translating some of that, especially working with fintech and tech companies? There's a ton of the compliance layers which feel really challenging. How do you tackle that piece of the puzzle?
I think, you might be better suited to answer that, but I feel like from our perspective, it really matters to have a deeper understanding of what is the financial services, what does the global banking look like in that particular country. In one particular example, we produced a very intense report of what are the top 20 banks. Do you have a connection to them? Who are we talking to if you're trying to bring your app or your product or your service? And I think truly that's where, in that particular conversation, it was off the table. We don't want to do it anymore because it's harder than we realized, and we couldn't be in compliance with that local regulation. So I think that is the other major part, I think, where we're very focused on is, does this make sense for you and your business?
Right. Yeah. And I would be curious from the Joblio side of things, because that's a big job, right? Like you got a few things on the plate. I know. Right. So especially if you're, having Joblio integrate or work with any larger scale institution or enterprise, and making sure that the tech piece of Joblio is, of course, on your side, we're making sure it's ethical, but then you have the compliance element. So how has that balance been for you?
It's tricky. I'm not gonna lie, it is tricky. So there's two pieces to it. One is exactly that. We are making sure that we're doing all of this work before we set foot in the country, right? We're building relationships. We are building relationships with government, with other organizations, with like-minded folks who are doing similar things. We're doing that before we're even launching in that place, right? We're not getting there and then trying to play catch up and saying, oh, we should have thought about this and this compliance regulation wasn't met. No, and everywhere has something that's a little bit different, and it's fluid. You can have one regulation one day, 2 days later, maybe, or 2 weeks later, something changes, right? You need to be able to be flexible and to build your programming to be malleable, to be able to pivot when things like that happen. That's why those relationships are so incredibly important from get-go, before you even get to work on the ground.
Yeah. So how do you think about like building relationships with governments in other countries? How does that go? Are you like
It's a big question.
Are you DMing people? What?
Not so much.
You send cold emails? No.
Depending on the.
But I mean, that it's true though, and those relationships take time.
Yeah, they do.
I mean, I would imagine
They do.
Even more so. Guys, I've been working on getting Maxine Waters on a stage for a few years. Done. Sorted.
That's not fun.
Anyways, but yeah, well, I wrote about it in my book and they loved it and blah, blah, blah. But sidebar. Curious about how you go about those relationships, because I do think that the people in this room, that would quite benefit them in terms of, I think, businesses are somewhat, I imagine, easier than trying to
some degree. To some degree. So I think it's a couple of things. One, I think that using data to show, Mary talked a little bit before about what worked, proving that this was effective, having evidence to show, what, we did this was the success that we had. This is why it will be successful here. Having all those pieces ready before you even have a conversation. Number two, relationships with other organizations, right? Okay. Relationships with other NGOs and business are underrated, right? NGOs are the ones who have that line back to government more oftentimes than others. There's going to be that connect there. Find a champion in government. That can be a local council person all the way up to sort of a state or provincial senator. It can look very different depending on where you are, but find your champion. That person is going to be who gets you into every meeting that you need to. Okay. Those tangential relationships, I know someone who knows somebody who did this before and they got some money over here. That's who we want to talk to, right? That's how you're going to start to build all of those relationships and the things that actually matter. And and relationships that actually matter and are going to be impactful. But it takes time.
Yeah.
It really does take time.
No, that's actually really helpful. And I think Mary kind of hit the nail on the head earlier, because she had mentioned how in other markets, the relationship piece of it can be more critical or more important. It's like literally important everywhere. But even more so in other countries where they really expect a lot more. I mean, you know, the Italians are doing like 4-hour dinners, right? So it's, I know from experience, from once working with the city of Milano, and I like looked up and was like, how is it 11 p.m. and I'm still at dinner drinking wine? But that's like a part of it, right? Like creating those are pieces of trust, right? And actually, for me, one of the best pieces of advice in my business I ever received was from Asia Bradley, of course, and she always, and she let me know, like, I was like, what is like the litmus test for deciding like how to actually work with people? And she was like, would you actually want to hang out with them? Would you actually would you chill with them? Would you, when things get tough and the money gets funny or anything like that, would you be able to like make it through? That's like a good way of thinking about that. And so I think for this audience and listeners, we have to think about having those kinds of relationships surrounding the ecosystems of our businesses, and that is how we move forward. And then, you know, before you know it, you have like a colleague or a teammate who's ready to like put boots on the ground in another country. I have one. Keltoum Mazid back there is ready to move to Mexico City. So, and I am very interested in Fintech FM expanding into that place. So that'll be our first boots on the ground, right? And that's been a huge theme here in terms of steps and tactics that you can take for that to actually, for the growth to come to fruition. With just a few minutes left here, I do want to talk about the future a bit. So Jessica, when you're looking ahead to 2026 and beyond, what do you think the next big unlock for fintechs expanding globally is? Is it a region, a relationship, or just technology that's about to change how companies think about global growth? I think this is particularly important given what is happening in the U.S., outside, all around us. But thoughts there?
You know, I think Kel's joining me in Mexico City, and I've been really fortunate to live in a bunch of places in the last 6 years. And I think what my advice would be, when I left and had my little backpack and was like, I'm going to travel and see as much as I could, I worked at one of the largest banks in the country, and I thought I knew everything. I thought we in America, we do it. We're the best. Well, then I went to Brazil and I realized, you know, Nubank is running the market there. They are doing it digitally. You sell coconuts and you can send someone money in 2 seconds. It's wild. And I think taking our glasses off and going, hey, what is actually happening globally, specifically in the fintech market, that we're not doing? And why are we not? That, to me, really feels like the opportunity is just really starting to expand our own perspective around what's happening globally.
I love that. It's because the market also isn't nearly as saturated. Right. So Nubank is out there just like dominating, owning. I interviewed the founder of an investing platform based in Mexico. And when I was interviewing him live on the NASDAQ trading floor. And I was like, I have like a shocked face when he told me they were like the second largest RIA out there and that there was only one other competitor. I was like, what? Excuse me? Like, meanwhile, here in the US, we have like an endless stream of investing apps that I like don't care about, right? Like it's wild. So the opportunity is there. However, if you, based on everything we've learned today, if you can't kind of find your footing in your country of origin, you don't just go and expand just because there's white space out there. You can have a small bit of success here and then still think about expanding and adapting that globally. But it starts with the origin. When you're advising if you're advising a founder today, what is one mindset or metric they should start tracking now to prepare for a global expansion? Let's say they wanted to do it in the next 2 years.
It sounds so basic, but do you know your customer? And do you know your customer? Literally, who is your ICP? Who are you talking to?
Yeah.
And are your messages currently getting through to them? And as you start to expand globally, does that shift? Do you have a different customer that you're talking to? And if so, how does it resonate in that particular market? And I think those basic questions around, hey, is my message resonating? Is my brand resonating? Do I feel like those metrics are pulling through the way they need to? Do I know my customer acquisition cost today?
Mm-hmm.
If I go expand, does it get cheaper? Maybe not. Does it get, way more? Does it double the cost? Maybe. And I think those actual numbers are what we are working with all of our founders, with all of our companies that we partner with to say that's the thing that matters.
Right. Well, and those numbers are going to help you drive the narrative as well, right? And that actually makes the branding easier when you have those numbers and you can tell that story. All right, Remy, close us out here. So you've said before that AI can be a force for fairness, not just efficiency. Talk to us about how Joblio is using AI, because I can't close any interview without talking about AI.
Well, that's okay because I have more breaking news. So there you go.
Yes, Lee.
So Joblio is actually, you're right, Nicole. I say it all the time that AI can either disenfranchise people that are already disenfranchised, and it can further marginalize people, or it can be a force to increase engagement, right? And increase accessibility. What Joblio is doing, and we're really excited to announce, is that next month we're launching our marketplace. It is a tech tool. It's an AI-empowered tech tool that is going to be used globally for job seekers as well as employers to connect directly. However, what it's going to do is, instead of somebody uploading a resume in sort of a traditional kind of a way, the app recognizes where you are, first of all, what country you're in, and automatically is thinking about what language you might be speaking, what your native language is. You then speak into the app. You're not typing anything. You're not uploading anything. That then creates a profile for you. I'm a welder. Like I said, I'm Joe. I'm a welder in Guatemala. I'd really like to go and work in Spain. This is what I know how to do. I'd really like to go. What happens then is that you're directly connected with our foundation, which would look at what other needs do you have when you're migrating to someplace else. Do you have money for your visa? Is your employer going to pay for that? How are employers paying for visas for people when they're taking migrant labor? Do you have housing when you get there? Is it safe? Are your human rights being protected when you're there? That's where that co-relationship comes into place, and we're able to help folks out, keep retention rates low, or keep retention rates high rather, and keep turnover low for employers. So we're really excited. We're launching it in Portugal next month, of course. And so that Brazil to Portugal corridor is the first place that we're looking. So
Oh my gosh.
I'm so excited. It's already working, but yeah, we're launching the AI tool next month.
Okay. And then how do, I guess for listeners and audience out here, because, obviously whether you're building in fintech or media or whatever intersection you're at here with us today, they can use this, right? This platform to be able to find the work and talent that they need. So I guess what's the best way that I can plug in my newsletter and on this current podcast before we close?
On this, please contact me. Yes, by all means, please.
Your email, your phone number is?
Absolutely. My email, rsales@joblio.co. Reach out.
Right.
We're super excited to work with anybody who is looking to hire to fill labor gaps. We are filling positions from healthcare all the way through IT to construction to everything in between. So yeah.
I mean, someone's building a whole conference in.
I'm just saying.
Happens to when you interested in humans. I think you might need some help, right, with like whatever crane build out you're doing at the show floor. So no, I love the connectivity already. Remy, Jessica, this has been so amazing, and also Mary, thank you all for joining on this live episode of Humans of Fintech, and thank you to everyone here who is working to shape the next chapter of fintech globally. There was a ton of tactical pieces of advice here, so I will recover it all in the Fintech is Fem newsletter. So if you aren't following along, be sure you do, and subscribe to the Humans of Fintech podcast. Thank you all so much. Please join me in thanking our speakers today.
Thank you for having us.
I also want to make sure to shout out the incredible sponsors that made this gathering possible. Fintech Meetup, Rosie Finch, Method & Co., Joblio, and Scalex. If you want to meet any of them, you have met some of them here on stage. Angelique is from Scalex, and she is wonderful and smart and brilliant, so feel free to learn more about the work that she is doing. We're going to do a lot more together as well, so you'll see more of Angelique and more of our friends that have spoken today, and more Fintech is Femme events. So enjoy, drink the coffee there. I'm serious about the champagne. Please drink it before you go off to your events and things. And thank you so much for being here. Let's have some fun. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Humans of Fintech. If you loved it, be sure to hit subscribe, and I'll see you next time.